Okay, today I'm gonna talk about axios in React. Uh, so again, we are gonna use this basic React project as a template, and finally it will look like this. As you can see here, so we just input something so that we can search the GitHub users, and whenever you see this static page, you need to think about how to split this into component. So first we're gonna do split component static template into components. Right. So actually, what I think you can do whatever you want. But for example, just like the last example we have done before the to-do application, we can split this search section as a component, and this is a list component. Inside of the list, there are some atom components, right? But in this case, I don't want to make it complex. I just gonna simply split two components, which is search component and list component, to display all those GitHub users. So so I need to create, inside the source code folder, I'm gonna create two components here. We don't need this hello and welcome. So the first one is search and a list, right? So search index.js, index.css, import React from React, import index.css, and export default class search extends React component render return search. So I just copy this to list. Okay, so in the root component, we don't need this two component anymore. Instead, we do search and list. Of course, we need to import search. List. Yeah, we have two components here. So for this static page, as you can see here, so this one is the search section, right? So we just copy this to search, and the rest of them, there is row card, right? So this is the list component. As you can see here, so the style thing, right? So we have already done this before. Of course, there is a container So I'm gonna paste the copy and paste this CSS file first, and we can deal with these errors later. So now we need a app.css, right? Copy this, paste it here. Okay, and we have already did this before, so basically we need to replace class with class name first. Right. Yeah. And style. Right. So replace style. Yeah, as you can see here, so style or width, and we replace it with style, the JSX syntax, right? So okay, did this wrong. So style dot equal to with okay. Yeah, it displayed, right? So there are still some warnings, right? As you can see here, it says target. If you use target blank, you need to use real, no refer as well. So we just give it a real, no refer. Yeah, still you must have alt prop. So we just add alt. As you can see here, so it is the link of avatars, right? So avatars pick. Okay, no error message anymore, right? So import app.css. Yep. And you may have already noticed that there is another bootstrap CSS file. So typically we cannot import this bootstrap.css file into the React component directly. So normally we will do it in this way. In the public static folder, we create a CSS folder and we copy the CSS and after that we just import this by link. CSS and bootstrap.css. Yeah, it displayed, right? So it works. It works as what we have seen, right? So, but now we have the static page. We need to split it into components. So I'm gonna open the component file. The first one is search, and next one is list. Right. So as you can see here, so section. This is the search section, right? You search. There's a header and input field and button. Right? So we just copy this here. Yep. And the rest of them are list. Okay. Yeah. Now we have already split it into components, right? So now we want to first again we need to go through that from the top to the bottom, and as you can see here, now I want to add a function on the button so that the input value could be get. So add button on the function. So search. I'll give it on click this dot handle search handle search. So right here we're gonna pass the value back to root app component to get data. So now we can so as you can see here, so there is a input field and one button, so you cannot get the value by using event.target.value. So this is our uncontrolled component. So I mean, you want to get a value, there is a ref, right? So there are three ways that you can use ref: the string ref, callback ref, and a create ref. In this case, I don't want to make it complex, even though the create ref is more recommended, but I use callback instead. So this is the current node. So we put current node into attach the current node on the instance, on the search component instance as an input property, right? So we want to this dot input dot value. Let's see if it works. Test. Yeah, test. It works, right? So now I need to pass this value back to root component. In this case, I'm gonna need a I'm gonna use deep destcture 7 and rename the value or property. What does this mean? So I can do it this way, like let keyword or something, right? Keyword equal to this dot input or value, right? But instead, I don't want to do. However, I don't want to do this. We do this instead. We do a deep structure assignment, which is const. So input value this, right? So let us display value. Yes. So this is not a function, but anyway, as you can see here, so test, right? At the same time, we can rename this value property on the instance, right? Because this is the keyword of the search, so we just rename it as keyword and use it as keyword. We don't use this. We don't need this anymore. We just use keyword. So if you want to use this search function, you need to declare it in the root component, right? So that you can pass the value from the search component back to the root component. So there must be a function called search keyword. Use get data using keyword. Test. Key search. This dot search. We need to pass this as a prop, right? So test. Yeah, as you can see here, test. Right. So in this way, we just get this value property and at the same time rename this value property, like rename this value property as keyword. So does it work? Does this value variables property still works? No. As you can see, there is a red epsilon underscore underline, right? So it doesn't when you rename this property, the value property doesn't exist anymore, so you cannot use this anymore, right? So now the point is, how do we use this keyword to get the data? Again, we use Axios, right? So in the Axios, we put a URL, and then we receive our promise project, and to display this, we use res.data, right? So response is not response; it is stored. The data is the data is stored in the response.data, right? As you can see here, so we need to import Axios, right? Because we have already npm install Axios from last class, so we don't need to install it again. We can just simply import this so that we can use this, right? So property, and next we're gonna use GitHub search API to get data from remote server. So what is the URL? How do we get the URL? You can just search it here. So GitHub search user API. As you can see here, we will display the users here, right? So if you read the documentation carefully, you will notice that there is search user, right? Example here. This is how we use the API. Whatever, including like YouTube API, so Twitter API, right? So you just check the documentation. They have public API for developers to use to get the data. So now we just use this URL https api.github.com you search users. Okay. So there are some parameters at the same time as you can hear. So query, this is where you put the query. So because this is a get method, right? So we need to use a question mark here. And how do we get this? We want to put a template string here so that we can embed the keyword inside of this query string. Now it should work. So let me have a try. Test. Oh, as you can see here, so data has been retrieved. Right? Username, ID, avatar. So you may have already noticed that we use a link, a URL from different origin based on the last class course and proxy. But why this time there's no course error? There's no cross origin error. Because URL starts with API is the public API for developers to get data. Course error was handled in the backend. Right. So because this URL is just for our developers, right? So that we can get some data from the remote server. So the backend has already handled that. So, but not all of them. I tried Twitter. Twitter didn't. But this one, GitHub, have handled the error for us. So we don't have to worry about the course error as cross origin error. So now we have already got the data, right? So next we're gonna display it. Users data. How do we? Of course, we need to set state. Users res.data. You need to take a look at this carefully. So an object has been returned and all the user data has been stored in a property named atoms, and this atoms is an array. Okay, so I'm gonna store the these atoms in a user array. Of course, we need to initialize this state, right? Now we have already got the state. We have successfully stored this into the state. We can also do it this way. Let us use this deep destcture assignment again. So const data atoms. We rename it as users. Right. So right here we can just put users here. Right. because the property name and and the key of the property and the value of the property are same. So there is shorthand. We can just use users instead directly. Let us display it here. Right? So users is an array, has already been displayed here, right? So okay. I won't format that. It format automatically. So now we have already get the data, right? So how do we display it? Of course, we need to users pass this to list component, and we display it right here. As you can see here, so we don't these are all hard coded, so we don't need this anymore. We just use one and we traverse the return data, right? So right here we have this props.users. We map, so each user will return it looks like it seems like there is a typo here. So yep. Yeah, now right. So this close tag is for row. Okay, so let's display it. As you can see it here, so all the so there are 30 users, right? So has already been displayed here. So of course you need a unique key. So if you take a look at this carefully, there is an ID here, right? Good. So k.user.id. Yeah, no error message anymore. Yes. Okay, and now we have displayed it, and the rest of them we need to review this again. There is a login. Login is like somewhat sort of username, right? So in this case, it's all React.js, so we just replace this with user.login test. Yep, username has changed. Avatar and a home page, right? So avatar URL, HTML URL. Home page. Test, right? Back to console, no error, right? So now we have already displayed it successfully. Displayed user data. And then next, you may have, let's go back to, okay, so this is not good enough. Why? Because when you search something like search this, you search this, you search this, you need to handle the error first, right? And sometimes when you search something, there is a small interval, the page is blank. We should show something like loading, or some like notification, like some message to users says, oh, this is progressing, and this is your action is processing, and there's no error, stuff like that. So when suppose you refresh the page, right? So now it is totally blank, and this seems like not quite correct. Maybe we can say, give it some welcome message here, right? So to make it more user friendly. So what we want to do is complete user friendly. So loading message, error message, and initializing message. Right. So how do we do this? We need to set up like is initializing. If initially it should be true, right? So is loading, initially it should be false, or if there error should be a string, right? Error message, right? So on top of this, in the list we want to display either loading, welcome, or error, or the retrieved data. How do we do that? We can have if. No, we cannot. We have already talked about this before. So instead of this return, only expression could be allowed. Statements like if else cannot be. So you may say, then if there's no if else, how do we handle that? We can use ternary operator, right? So suppose there is so in this case we need to destructure this. So because there are many, well, not many, there are 4. But in the real life project, there may be many variables, right? So right here, I want to do a destructure first. Initializing is loading, error, or users. This dot props. Instead, you cannot just only pass this. You need to pass the state. Right? When you have an object or you have multiple key value pairs you need to pass to the child component, you use spread operator, right? So right here we don't use this dot props. So if there's only 1 or 2 key value pair or props dot property, you can use this dot props dot what. There are many. You better do a destructure segment first. So in this we can check if it is initializing. If it is true, we return something like a welcome message, right? Welcome. Or if it is false, if it is loading. If it is loading, we tell it it is loading. Or if it is display. If you fail display at last, you need to have an error message here, right? So return loading. Okay, whatever the order, right? So we can just check if the error is null. The null is false. If it is not null, we just display this error, right? So one error, and finally we display it. I didn't put this error at the bottom because I cannot find the bracket, too many brackets. So it doesn't matter the order, right? So as long as the error is not null. So so now we need to modify this a little bit, or if you can see test because loading is setting to force or something. So because initializing is setting to true, right? So whenever you did search, it's not initializing anymore, right? Initializing force, right? Yes, initializing. Oh, sorry. This dot state dot slice. Seems something wrong here. Why? This dot set state is initializing. Yeah. So I forgot the curly bracket. So force, right? Whenever you do search, you need to set this, right? And then you need to set is loading to true, right? When you're done search, when the data has been retrieved successfully, is loading is false, right? Test. Yeah, as you can see, it works, right? And we test hello loading, right? No welcome message anymore, right? So to make it more to make it more pretty. So text align. Should be text align, right? So CSS text center text align txt. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Echo. Okay. Yeah. Welcome. All right. loading. Central position. And okay, so next, what if there is some error? What if there is some error? So let me just change this to a bad link. Users 2345. There's error and the loading just keep loading. You didn't tell the user what the error is and it keep loading and user doesn't know what happened, right? So in the promise object there is error. So I have error. We can just display error anyway. Yeah. So again, we need to set this dot set state. So error, okay. Because they are same. We will display the error here. Yeah. At the same time, if there is error, there is not a loading anymore. Yeah. So objects are not valid as a React child error request. What does this mean? So you stored. Let me give you a. How do I show you the okay, I'm gonna just get rid of this first. As you can see here, so error, now you stored object. So then you put the object as content of a page element, which is wrong. So you need to store a string. So this error is error dot message. Then it should be fine. So test. Yeah, as you can see here. So now error, it is a string, right? You display it here at the center of the branch. I can give it a color. Okay, perfect. Now it works. You have already know how to use the Axios get the data and initializing. Axios get the data and they use the API of different origin to retrieve the data. We get rid of this, and either it succeed or failed. You have two handlers. You define handlers here, and then you finally display in the list component. Yeah, this is the basic usage of Axios in React. Okay, pretty much about the Axios today.